The Chrome King is the final wing in the Liberation of Undermine Raid. It is home to Gallywix himself. Very quickly going to describe how this guide is set up. The video is split into chapters. You can find them down below. The first chapter will describe the boss fight mechanics, the second chapters describe each of the important abilities, and the final chapter will be role-specific duties. LFR and Normal are very different, and I will have marked areas for separation. Gallywix is a 3-phase fight with a brief intermission between phase 2 and 3. This is a very high movement fight. On Normal, before the pool, the raid should be split into 2 groups and there should be at least 1 person designated to bomb duty. On LFR, the raid does not need to be split. Phase 1. The raid should be split into 2 groups as the main mechanic for this phase is alternating a soak. To make things easier, the group should position on opposite sides of the boss and all players should stack near the tank. The boss does not move, so positioning is a little easier here. Now let's cover the soak mechanic, Scatterblast Canisters. This is a large frontal cone attack that targets the tank. It deals damage, applies a healing absorb, and applies a debuff that increases damage of the next Scatterblast canisters by 100%. Tanks should swap after each use. The boss will use Big Bad Bunch of Bombs, where 2 large boxes are dropped onto the arena. Run out of these big circles, and once they explode, move back into position. After the big explosion, there will be multiple other smaller explosions, so just continue avoiding all the circles, but don't stray too far from the tank, as the Scatterblast canisters rotation will continue. The only other note for phase 1 is 1 player will be targeted with Sapper's Satchel. This is shown by a brown ring. Just stay away from other players. For tanks, there are a couple things to know. First, the boss does more damage the further away you are, so always make sure you are in melee range. Second, the boss continuously buffs himself with trick shots. Every 4 seconds, he gains 1 stack. Each stack increases the total damage this ability does. He dumps all stacks when he either switches targets or if he reaches 10 stacks. He should never reach 10 stacks as long as you're swapping with each canister's attack, but keep it in mind as this mechanic exists through phase 2 as well. For LFR, the raid does not have to split. There is no soak mechanic, so you just have to avoid all of the circles. For tanks, there is no trick shots and there are no debuffs, so you do not have to ever switch unless you really want to. Phase 1's abilities. Scatterblast Canisters. This is a large frontal cone attack that applies a healing absorb and a debuff that increases damage of the next Scatterblast by 100% for 30 seconds. Canister Detonation. If the healing absorb is not cleared, it will explode, dealing damage equal to the remaining amount of absorb left on that player. Big Bad Bunch of Bombs. This is 2 large boxes of explosives that are called in and shown by a big ring. This deals massive damage and applies a 45-second dot to anyone hit. This also launches multiple other smaller explosions after its detonation. Sapper's Satchel. A player is marked with a brown circle, and upon detonation, any player's hit suffer a 45-second dot. Blast Burns. This is a stackable 45-second dot that ticks damage every second. This is applied by almost every bomb attack. Suppression. This marks a bunch of circles and tracks players for 6 seconds. Venting Heat deals raid damage over 4 seconds and applies a dot. This dot increases by 1 second every time Venting Heat is used. Gatling Cannon is tank related. This deals increasing physical damage the further away the tank is. Trick Shots. This is also tank related. Galley will gain a stack every 4 seconds. When changing targets, or if he reaches 10 stacks, he will dump all of them, dealing physical damage and applying a fire dot that lasts for 9 seconds. Damage from this dot is dependent on how many stacks of trick shots are dumped. Phase 2. At 100 energy, Gallywix will start phase 2, which is shown with yellow circles appearing around him and adds crashing down. There are a few main mechanics here. Adds, bombs, and a soak. Let's cover the adds first. Adds are summoned around the center hole of the arena shown by yellow circles. Avoid them as they crash down, dealing damage. The adds have one main interruptible ability called Juice It, and it buffs them. The raid needs to quickly kill them as they drop bombs. There will be multiple bombs all around the arena. One of them needs to be used to destroy the Giga control panel, and the rest need to be thrown down the center hole. Let's cover the bombs and the Giga coils. There are 4 Giga coils spread around the arena. There are 2 ramps on the sides of each coil and a blue control panel on those ramps. During phase 2, Gallywix will activate one of these Giga coils. While active, this deals pulsing raid damage and it increases the longer it stays on. To disable the coil, players must destroy one of the control panels with a bomb. Do not destroy both panels on the same coil or it will electrify that entire area of the arena so you cannot travel through it. Walk over a bomb and use your extra action button to pick it up. You'll know when you can because your screen will become all electrified. These bombs deal damage to you when you stand on them or carry them, so keep that in mind. Once you pick a bomb up, blue arrows will appear next to the Giga control panels to help guide you amongst all the other chaos. Once a player takes it to the panel, it will automatically detonate when you're close enough. The rest of the players need to use their extra action button while facing the middle hole to throw the bomb down. These bombs will deal heavy raid damage if they are not thrown away. The final mechanic is a soak mechanic called Fuse Canisters. This marks 2 players with large soak circles to split up for this attack. Once it detonates, it also applies a healing absorb to everybody that was hit. Couple final notes here. When Gallywix is activating a Giga Coil, he remains in the center of the arena and will blast a large lethal beam towards the raid. So keep that in mind while you're dealing with the ads. After the Giga Coil is stunned, he will fly to a corner of the arena where he will use his soak mechanic and his other abilities. His other abilities are pretty much the same from phase 1, so just avoid all of the circles. If he calls in the big box of explosives, he will rotate clockwise between each of the Giga Coils. Tanks are still unable to move the ball, so be sure you're moving appropriately. Gallywix will alternate between the center and the edge until he reaches 50%. For LFR, there is only one ad that drops a bomb. The bomb still needs to be carried to one of the control panels. When Galley is to the side, there is no soak mechanic, but the raid has a couple of big ads that they have to deal with. They only melee hit, so the tank that is not aggroed with the boss should pick them up. Phase 2's abilities. During the Giga Coils. Giga Coils. Galley activates a coil, and this deals increasing pulsing damage to the raid every second until the coil is interrupted. Giga Blast. This is a large beam that deals massive damage to anyone that's hit, and deals raid damage in general. Giga Bomb. When a bomb explodes, it deals raid damage and applies a stacking 9-second dot. Charged Giga Bomb. When you're standing next to a bomb or carrying it, it inflicts damage every half second. The ads have an ability called Juice It. It's interruptible and applies a stacking buff that increases their damage done and move speed by 5%. After the Giga Coils, his main ability is Fused Canisters. This targets 2 players with a soak. It deals massive damage that is split amongst those that are inside. It also applies a Healing Absorb that will explode if not cleared, dealing even more damage to that player. His previous abilities, Suppression, Venting Heat, Big Bad Bunch of Bombs, and the Gatling Cannon Trick Shots combo. The Intermission. Once Galley reaches 50% HP, the Intermission will trigger. A large circle appears as his mech will crash down onto the arena, so run out of this. Once he locks into the mech suit, he obtains a large absorb shield and begins channeling Total Destruction. This damage continues to increase the longer it lasts and will at some point wipe the raid. So pop Lust and quickly burn through his shield. Once it's gone, someone needs to use an interrupt to stop the Total Destruction cast. Once it's interrupted, Phase 3 will begin. Phase 3. Phase 3 retains most of Phase 2's abilities with a few new ones. Galley would still fly to the center of the arena to activate the Giga Coils, but once they are disrupted, he will return to his mech and can then be freely moved around the arena. The Giga Coil mechanics remain the same here. Kill the ads, handle the bombs, avoid the beam, and destroy the panels. The only note is that if all coils have at least one destroyed panel, you will have to start destroying the second one. Once the second panel is destroyed, that entire area of the arena becomes electrified, which will continuously shrink the safe zones, making this a DPS race. New mechanics are associated when Gallywix is in his mech suit, so let's cover them. Tick-Tock Canisters will throw out 3 canisters that must be soaked. Players need to divide up and split this damage. It also applies a Healing Absorb to those players that are hit. When he uses Suppression, he will electrify a ring around himself, which can one-shot you if you don't get away in time. His tank ability is called Bigger, Badder, Bomb Blast. This marks a big circle around the tank, and the tank should run out and away from the raid. Getting hit applies a damage increase debuff and a dot, so tanks will swap after each use. Shortly after this detonates, multiple players will be targeted with overloaded rockets. You'll have 3 lines pointing out and away from you. Try to stay still as much as possible while everyone else avoids the lines. Just as a final note here, there are a lot of overlapping abilities and area effects, so it is very important to constantly watch the screen and not be caught staring at your bars. For LFR, the main difference here is that there are no soaks to worry about. Phase 3's new abilities. Tick-Tock Canisters. This places 3 canisters on the ground which need to be soaked before the timer reaches 0. This deals raid damage if nobody soaks. Players hit will have a Healing Absorb that's applied to them that explodes if it's not cleared. The Galley Buck's Final Blast. This triggers with Suppression and is shown by an electric ring around him. It explodes, dealing massive damage to anyone that's inside and deals less damage the further away you are. Sabotage Zone. If both control panels are destroyed, Giga Coils will form an electric zone that deals heavy damage to anyone inside that ticks every second. The Bigger, Badder, Bomb Blast. This is tank related. This targets the tank with a large ring. It explodes, dealing damage, applies the Blast Burns dot, and a 200% damage increase debuff that lasts for 1.5 minutes. Overloaded Rockets. This triggers after the tank attack. Random players will have 3 lines pointing away from them, and it shoots rockets in those directions after 5 seconds. Notable previous abilities are Suppression, Venting Heat, and Giga Blast. Role-specific duties. Tanks. During Phase 1, taunt swap after each Scatter Blast canisters. Stay close to the boss while you're holding aggro. Phase 2. During the Giga Coil, group up and interrupt the ads. After the Giga Coil, taunt swap before the boss reaches 10 stacks of trick shots. Phase 3. During Giga Coil, group up and interrupt the ads. After Giga Coil, run away from the raid before Bigger, Badder, Bomb Blast detonates, and taunt swap after each use. Healers. During every phase, Venting Heat's raid dot increases in time with each use. Players that are hit by any explosive will have a 45-second dot applied to them, and it can stack. During Phase 1, expect raid damage during Scatterblast canisters and quickly clear the healing absorbs. Phase 2, during the Giga Coils, expect increasing raid damage the longer it lasts, and after the Giga Coils, fused canister soaks will apply healing absorbs. During the intermission, raid damage increases every second until it's interrupted. Phase 3, during the Giga Coils, expect increasing raid damage the longer it lasts. After the Giga Coils, the TikTok canister soaks will apply healing absorbs. Suppression's electric explosion will do unavoidable raid damage as well. DPS. During every phase, do not get hit by avoidable explosives. It applies a stackable 45-second dot. Actively utilize your defenses, especially during soaks. Phase 2, during the Giga Coil, quickly kill and interrupt the ads, throw bombs into the center, and use one to destroy a control panel. After the Giga Coil, split into 2 groups to soak fused canisters. During the intermission, pop Lust and interrupt the total destruction cast once his shield is broken. In Phase 3, during the Giga Coil, quickly kill and interrupt the ads, throw a bomb into the center, and save one for the control panel. After Giga Coil, split into 3 groups to help soak TikTok canisters. Also watch out for the lines with overloaded rockets. Congratulations, you just defeated the final boss of the Liberation of Undermine Raid. Shout out to these channel members. If this video helped them, press the thumbs up. Subscribe if you enjoy WoW content. I have plenty of guides, tips and tricks, podcasts, and more. You can show extra support by becoming a channel member. It's 99 cents a month and gives you early ad-free access to all my videos. Be sure to check out the merch store. I'll see you in the next one.